So I want to use this data set to teach you the basics of CYPHER, which is Neo4j's query language. I think CYPHER is awesome. When I was first engaged by them, the first thing we did was go out and look for how we were going to store this data set. I've been using relational databases for so long, I am fed up with them. I was hoping there was something better. And we looked at a lot of graph databases, and for me, Neo4j is the best by a mile because of CYPHER. None of the other graph databases I've looked at for query language remotely as nice to use as CYPHER. So what does it look like? Well, the reason I like CYPHER is because the way your CYPHER queries look. If you squint a bit at the screen, because the screen's a bit bigger than I'm used to presenting on, I admit. If you squint at that, it looks a bit like a graph. Very, a bit of imagination, but it looks a bit like a graph. So what's in the brackets? They're records. They're nodes in a graph term, but they're records. The bits in the graph, in the brackets there. The square brackets is how you say their relationship, how they're connected. And think of those as like foreign keys in a normal database. Okay? And Neo4j calls them relationships. Now, the other thing about these relationships is they can be directional. They don't have to be, but they can be. Hopefully the green's coming out there to highlight the arrow and show you that this is saying that the relationship goes from A to B. That's how it works. And that's the basics of how you construct something in CYPHER. So to find a record in CYPHER, we're going to expand on this a bit now. The match keyword is like an SQL select. It's the equivalent of that. Normally what you're looking for are records. There's normally a from record of some kind, a second record too, and how they're connected when you're structuring a query. That's what you normally do, and we'll see lots of this throughout the talk. In order to use what you find in those matches, you need to give them names. You know how in SQL you can do table aliases? Select blah as something? It's like that, except you have got to give it a name if you want to do anything with it. Okay? I've just used A and B. You can use anything, and they don't have to be single letters. They can be whole words if you want. Relationships. You can actually return the relationship as well, rather than just using it to find the related records. Because relationships are records in their own right. You can actually put data inside them. I don't make much use of that, but it's a neat facility to have if you ever need it. If you need to tell relationships apart by more detail than just their name.
So is that the equivalent of a generated record thing?
I'm not sure what you mean.
So you're merging, or you're taking data from both to make a middle?
No, you don't. No, the relationship is actually a unique thing in its own right. Okay. That might become clearer as we go into some concrete examples. To say what kind of records you're looking at, they call these labels. If you think of these as table names, they're not, but it helps to get started if you think of them as table names to help you translate your existing skills across. Records can actually have multiple labels. They're not limited to one like you do with tables, which is kind of handy. And relationships also have a label, which is the name of it. And that's the basics of how that works. And if you review the slides online later, there's just a reminder there of what's there. Now with CYPHER queries, I've found that this holds true all the time. You're using the relationships to say what kind of records you want, and then you filter the actual records from those relationships by a where clause. And this is why we start to name things. So we've assigned the name A to the whatever record's on the left, and that allows us to refer to it in our where clause in order to start filtering out the records that have matched. Now, unlike SQL, you have to be very explicit to say what you want returned from a query. Neo4j doesn't know, so you have to have a return statement. And again, that's another reason we name things, so you can say what you're going to return. So if you don't want to use a record in a where clause, you don't want to use it in a return statement, you don't have to give it a name, which is handy when you're starting to traverse paths. Match is way more powerful than I can go into here, and way more powerful than I fully understand. I'll be quite honest about that. But you can do cool things like this, where you're actually using multiple relationships in the same query to find the record you want. That's kind of handy, and we're going to see some examples of that in real life as we go through the slides. Another reason I like CYPHER is query aggregation. As with Mongo and anything else that supports query aggregation, it comes with the caveats that query aggregation is slower than just doing simple queries. But it's so nice as a way to break down a problem and write queries, and Neo4j is actually not too bad performance-wise. It's quite fast, especially once it's warmed up. It does seem to cache quite aggressively in memory, which is a good thing. So you can do crazy stuff like this. So there's the multiple relationship thing I've shown in before. And we can feed named fields into a second query, which is really handy. As a way to think about breaking down a problem in order to find the records you want, it really helps. And we're going to be seeing query aggregation a lot in the live queries we're going to go into. Now, I appreciate this is really whistle-stop, and none of this has probably gone in. Don't worry about it. Neo4j's got a lot of documentation online. That's the URL for there. The slides will be online as well for you to go find these later. One of their developer relations people in London, Mark Needham, who's a lovely chap, I've actually met him. I found when I was learning Neo4j, if I was getting stuck and not sure how to express a solution to a problem, the answer was normally on his blog. It helped that he's also a football fan, so a lot of his blog posts are actually him modeling football data as well, which kind of helped, although he doesn't have the 100-year, this kind of data set I'm playing with. But Mark Needham's blog is a very good source to go to, and often it's easier to find the answer there than in Neo4j's own documentation. And if you're ever down in London, he hosts the Neo4j meetups that they do, and they do them, I think, more than once a month now. I've been to one, highly recommend it.